Hi, my name is Maryna Kuzmenko, and today we have our next conversation at Agfluencers. Our project Agfluencers is about inspirational women in sustainable agriculture. And today we have interesting guests from Nigeria, and this lady, she has quite good experience in working not in agriculture, but then joined the agriculture industry, and for the last, as I understand, 4 years.
Yeah.
So she is with us among the agritech women leaders. So Mavis, please tell a little bit about yourself and about your project.
Okay, thank you, Maryna. So, as you said, my name is Mavis Aiyeju, and I live in Nigeria. I'm half German, half Nigerian. So I was born in Germany, and I also grew up partly in Germany. And then most of my adult life, I've been living in Nigeria, though. As you mentioned earlier, I was actually in the PR sector. PR, marketing, brand management. I did TV production and all that. So I was in a completely different sector. And about 5 years ago, actually, I went into agriculture. And about 4 years ago, I set up ME Solutions. ME Solutions itself, as a company, focuses on soilless farming technology. So this could be hydroponics, aeroponics, and we generally look for issues in the agricultural sector and how these can be solved. And on as a subsidiary, which we're just setting up now, we're actually also in the social impact commodity trading sector. So that's basically who the company is and who I am.
Okay, thank you so much, Mavis. And here I see the interesting point. So it was, I saw your profile, and I saw that it was 2016 when you, 2015, end of 15 year, and you decided to finish your media business, to finish your work in media industry, and then you decide to switch and go to agriculture. What was the reason? What was the trigger of this?
So I think it was a combination of things. I started in the entertainment and media industry very early. I didn't go to university, so I actually have been working half of my life, probably since I was more than half of my life. Actually, I think I've been working since I was 16. So I got into media when I was just 20. And by 2015, I had actually been in the industry for 10 years, right? And even though I had a very successful career, I guess you can say in a way, there were lots of very interesting projects. I was very, very fortunate to be part of a very big project in Africa and also in Nigeria. But for one, I think I at some point didn't feel very challenged anymore. And the other point, what was also happening was the Nigerian economy crashed, which actually happened everywhere because it was during the oil crisis when there was an oil crash, I think 2015, 2016, where the price per barrel went from $100 to like $50, right? And a lot of countries that are dependent and are oil exporters, they were affected drastically by it because the economy basically depended on that stable income. So, and obviously, unfortunately, Nigeria is one of these countries, even though, 50, 60 years ago, Nigeria was huge in agriculture, a huge processor and manufacturer and exporter of agricultural products. When oil was discovered, that industry was completely abandoned. So our agricultural sector and industry is not as strong, or not even close to as strong and as powerful as it used to be. So what you now have is a country that's now solely depending on exporting oil, and then the oil price crashed, and basically our entire economy fell apart, right? So our exchange rate doubled, which was crazy. I mean, you would see maybe $1 was 150 naira, and within 2-3 months it was 300 naira. Imagine what that does to an economy, right? People who are importing products, processors need to import machinery. All of a sudden, everything is double. So it was 2015, end of 2015, 2016 was a very, very difficult year. I had friends who worked in oil and gas who lost their jobs, right? So one of the things at that time I was asking myself is, I think at the end of the day, we're all somewhat responsible for the country that we live in and the economy, right? Um, and one of the biggest topics was obviously the fact that we're importing more than we're exporting. We're importing a lot of luxury products, and that's not supporting our economy. It's not supporting local jobs. It's not supporting processing, and etc. And at the time, and a big part of my career was actually I promoted a lot of foreign brands, multinational brands. So I did really cool and interesting stuff like for Porsche and, Porsche, the car brand, and for alcohol brands. I did produce a martini commercial, et cetera, right? But these are all luxury products. And unfortunately, due to the lack of infrastructure we have here, they're not processing here. So the amount of jobs they're creating is not a lot. You just have a showroom and you have a sales office. So I'm basically promoting products that are being imported and that are in some way harming our economy, right? So I felt like I'm part of the problem.
Mhm.
Because during that time, the government was really trying to communicate that we have to start looking inwards, right? We have to stop doing medical tourism where you're always flying out for medical care or always flying out for holidays. Nigeria is a beautiful country. Why don't we travel within the country? These are things that were being spoken about a lot. So I was really shaken at that time. I felt like I'm promoting these products. I'm not helping the situation. So I had like a quarter life crisis, maybe you can say. I was really discombobulated and really challenged myself mentally. I didn't actually have a plan to go into agriculture. It's just something that happened. So I decided I didn't want to do it anymore, right? The media and brand management and all that. And ironically, I had no plan. I didn't have financial security. I had nothing. I just decided I didn't want to do this anymore. And during that time, a friend of mine called me and he was like, "Oh, you need to meet the scientist. He's really cool. You have to meet him." And he didn't give me a lot of information. He was being very mysterious about it. So I met with them, and this was someone who had been experimenting with soilless farming, right, with aeroponics and hydroponics, right? So when I met him, and I first off, I was so mind blown just by the fact that plants can grow without soil. You know, now when I think about it, it's so logical, and of course, right, because plants don't eat soil, but at the time, I think we never really think about the fact that plants are in the soil, but it's not because they need the soil, right? They extract what they need. They extract water, they extract oxygen, they extract nutrients, right? So you can give that to them in another way, and they have to fight less. There's less struggle, less bacteria, less, all these other things. So yeah, so that's kind of where that journey started. I was so fascinated. And one of the things that I realized is because even in my media and entertainment background, I had been working for myself for years already. So probably like 6, 7, 8 years, right? So I already had entrepreneur experience, right? And in as much as media and agriculture is very different, a lot of the experiences of running small businesses or being on your own or being an entrepreneur, you can apply really in any sector, right? Which is exactly what I did, right? I tried to figure out, okay, what are we as a company? What are we trying to do? What's the vision, right? What's the goal, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of how that journey started. And I did a complete 360 into a completely different sector.
Oh, that's good. And so inspirational, especially when you said that you uh, don't have any strong educational degree. You don't have any
Yeah, no, I don't.
PhD or I don't know, even master.
No,
No, but you
I didn't
you
even
are
go to
speaking like
university.
uh-huh. But your life training. You are very good life
You're
trained
right,
person.
absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's also a question of interest, right? I mean, of course, education is important, right? And I wouldn't say don't get educated, right? Education is very important, right? And I did want to go to university, but it didn't happen for me at the time, right? And I wasn't going to sit around and just wait. So I started working, right? And there was even a time where I had an amazing career. I was 21 and I was working at the biggest record label in Nigeria, which was very exciting. But I know that there was a time where I was like, oh, maybe I should just go back to school. And one of my mentors at the time was like, school, you can always go back to school. You can go back to school at 60, right? School will always wait for you, but a career will not wait for you. Opportunities will not wait for you, right? You'll be gone for a few years and you think everybody waited for you. No, other people came and took your jobs and took your positions. So that's when I made that conscious decision. But like you said, I mean, thank God I'm, in the internet age, right? So of course, Google is my best friend, right? Everything I didn't know, I would research. I always did a lot of research. And then, asking people, right? I always spoke to people and informed myself. So I think, like you said, right, you can just educate yourself from your environment and just life and experiences and making mistakes and all that.
Thank you. And Mavis, I have a question about, you said that you have this huge experience in media business, and then you turning point, you have this aeroponics, hydroponics, and other interesting soilless agriculture. So what was the main challenge for you at that time? Is it still knowledge, or you said that even this experience of entrepreneur was not applicable from business media to business in agriculture? What was the challenge?
There were many challenges.
So
I mean, I
let's
think
list three of them. Three.
Three. I think, like I said, right, the overall umbrella structure of entrepreneurial life, I think you can really apply, right, in different sectors. That doesn't matter, right? But then there are now more micro issues, right, that now come into play. So, and this challenge that I'm going to talk about more is now also probably more pertaining to Nigeria and African environment I'm in, right? So one of the biggest challenges I still have, to be honest, is there is no technical expertise available here. And what I mean by technical expertise is not because we don't have technical people here, but we don't have an environment that allows technical people to experiment and test and create and invent things from nothing, right? So the technical expertise, we have great engineers in this country, right? But they're all probably around oil and gas, they're around construction, they're around specific sectors, right? And in the university, they will teach them these specific things, right? So everybody's very like, this is all I know, right? So you have, in the Western world, you have universities that have programs and grants and funding that allow students just to experiment and explore and allow their mind to be very innovative, right? So that was a huge challenge for me because, again, I'm not an engineer, right? But technically, my brother, who is an engineer, always says, yes, you are an engineer because forget the degrees, right? I re-engineered the system that we have now because when I couldn't find anyone to do it, I just had to do it myself, right? And call my brother and say, oh, how does pressure work? And how can I use pressure? And how can I create, and how can I do this? And, so figuring it out myself. So I feel like even though that was a great experience for me, it did waste a lot of time, right? So that's time that we could have finished our research and development. We could have gone into fundraising maybe 2 years ago, right? But because research and development has taken so long that, we've not been able to launch in the market until now over the next few months, that I feel like, that's a lot of time gone. So I would say technical expertise and technical support is a huge challenge. Another challenge I would say is so I did get some organic funding here and there from our board, right? So we have a few directors and they put in small funding, but we didn't get substantial seed investments or anything like that. We raised what we had internally, put in money. But of course, it would have been easier to just get investment to fund R&D. And again, we could have been a lot faster. But I think in the entrepreneurial world, and I think that's everywhere, to be honest, there's so much funding going into startups, which is wonderful, right? Because really that's like we're creating the future, right? But I also feel like we're creating a lot of bubbles, right? So you have a lot of investors investing in fintech, right? And then everybody's putting money in just fintech, right? Or putting in software, and everybody's just putting in software, right? I feel like there is limited funding for new, innovative, just completely out of the ordinary things that don't really exist right now. I feel like there's a lot of lack of funding for entrepreneurs who are doing inventive stuff and also who are doing hardware. because most of the investment usually in tech is always software, right? Because it's less risky, it's less capital intensive, it's easier to assess the risk, it's easier to say, okay, this worked in India, we can apply it here, or this worked there. So there's a lack of funding for hardware, invention, and things like that in the entrepreneur sector anywhere in the world. I know there are some that fund, but there's not a lot. And in Nigeria, that's even worse, right? So people are like, oh, we don't understand this, so we don't want to fund this, right? So I would say like technical support, funding for more innovative approaches in agriculture, not really that easy. So those are some of the challenges I would say I had, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mavis, and also I have a question about the female-male industry. I mean that you know that it's one of the popular thought that agriculture is a male-dominated industry, and all of my previous guests, it's around 5 or 6 ladies who spoke about their ways in agriculture. They shared experience that unfortunately they are not feeling completely comfortable because they are not heard and they are not trusted. So what is your feeling and what is your opinion about this situation when women have voices in agriculture and they want to speak?
I mean, and it's funny, right? This is for me again where I took experience from my previous career and then took it with me, right? Because I think what country and what environment and what culture you're in actually really has a big role to play in how you're experiencing your career experiences as a woman, right? Because culture is very important, tradition, right? So being in an African country, in a West African country, Nigeria, is also a very traditional cultural country, right? Where you have respect for your elders, you have respect for men, etc. Women are the homemakers, right? So it's a very traditional country, right? In that sense. So even when I was working in entertainment, that was very challenging for me, right? Also because I was very young, I was a woman, and I was mixed race, right? So those were 3 challenges actually I had to deal with because I was 21, 22, and I would have staff working under me that was maybe twice my age, or I had children that were my age, right? So how do you give someone instructions, someone that you are supposed to respect and show respect for, right? Because that's the culture. So I think it's almost like this feeling, it's like this, there's no very, 1 + 1 is 2. No, it's a very fine line you have to walk and figure out where you're giving this person respect, but you're also showing my position, right? I am your boss. However, I respect you as a man and as an older person, but so I had to learn. So I went through a lot of very difficult years actually when I was much younger in my 20s because of that. So when I went into this, I think it was a lot easier. I think one of the advice that I got from one of my mentors who was male, he actually just said, do what you do and do it really well, and it will give people no choice but to respect you. So I'm not necessarily in the category of being like a feminist. I think I'm more like, can we just get on with it? I think even as a man, you're going to face challenges, and as a man, you're going to hit walls. So I think if we dwell too much on, oh, we're women and these are the restrictions, I feel like life is not that simple and the world is not that simple. I feel like it's not straight cut. Sometimes women may not get opportunities because they're not qualified. And sometimes women will not get opportunities because they're women, right? And that's very unfortunate. But I think this generation, and we're in 2020, I think we're in a much better place than if we were in the 1800s or in the early 1900s, right? I feel like we have to be really realistic that we are worlds away from what used to be and where we are now, right? Yes, there's still a lot of challenges. And to be honest, it's not just the fact that certain sectors or industries are men's world. There's also the sexual harassment and sexual connotations, right? And the advances where, yeah, no problem, we'll give you this sponsorship or this funding, but what are you going to do for me, right? And then you're in these positions where you have to make decisions, your career or, integrity, right? So it's not an easy, quote unquote, game to play. I maybe I've been very fortunate. I think, I mean, I've dealt, even within the agriculture sector, I've dealt with high net worth individuals that are men and show me an incredible amount of respect who have put their trust, put funding in me. Yes, you're going to have bad experiences, but at least my experience has always been, I always felt like the good experiences also balance out the bad experiences. So I'm not really focused on the fact that, oh gosh, I'm a woman and I have a lot of disadvantages. Yes, I'm a woman, and it may shock a lot of people that most of the time when I'm in seminars or forums and I'm networking, and I can tell you that I can tell you hundreds of times if I tell them I'm in agriculture, they're just like, you don't look like it. And I'm like, but is there supposed to be a look for a farmer? That doesn't make any sense. We're not 200 years ago where I'm on the field in like dirty clothes, right? Because my question, when they say that, I'm always like, well, what does the farmer look like? What is someone in agriculture meant to look like, right? You can't tell me that, you know? So these are things that I see all the time, but I also feel like the age we're in now, because there's so much awareness around it, I feel like there's more positive impact around it. But there's also a lot of negative, right? But I just don't put a lot of focus in it because life is just like that. You know, it's a combination of bad experiences and good experiences. So I guess I just focus more on the good stuff, you know.
Mavis, I think you are disrupting their ideals about agriculture, and after
What does
conversations,
a farmer look like?
yeah, after conversations with you, they will think, okay, so beautiful and intelligent ladies work in agriculture, probably it's something the next
Yeah,
age era industry.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
Mavis, and also you, I see that you are a huge optimist and you are on the positive side of life. So
You
where,
have to be if you're an
yeah,
entrepreneur.
actually,
You
I
don't have a
understand.
choice.
We don't have any other choice.
No.
Where do you get your inspiration and energy? And I don't know what advice can you give to other females who are also running their startups and projects, just not to give up or how to keep themselves?
I mean, the entrepreneur journey in general, and it's to be honest, it doesn't even matter what sector, is a very, very difficult one. I'm always so I really avoid these kind of things, to be honest, right? Because I'm just focused on working. So you're very lucky that I agreed to do this because so many people are like, oh, that's good, and I'm like, no, not really, but one of the things that I have been willing to do a few times now is like doing talks with entrepreneurs and startups, right? Just having conversations with them, just because I feel like globally we've really glorified the entrepreneur journey, right? And it's just made so beautiful because all we're getting through the media is always a snapshot of that journey, right? So all we usually see is this company raised this much money, right? Now, when that's all you see, right, people now have this impression that that's what that's like. I have a great idea, I put it together, and I just get funding. No, that's not how it works, right? You're going to go through so many difficult things and make so many mistakes and lose money and get frustrated and get discouraged and all those things, right? So one of the things I think is also really understanding what that journey is, right? And what kind of commitment that requires. Another thing I always tell people is you're probably not going to make a lot of money in the beginning, right? I think that really needs to be clear that the entrepreneurial journey is not a journey of wealth. It's really not, right? Even if you're raising funding, the funding is not for you, it's for the company and to run the company, right? So now when you have that, right, human beings were driven by materialistic statuses, right? So we go through life and we acquire these things that, you know, take us to the next level in life, right? You get a car, you get an apartment, you get married, you can now have a house, you have children, right? So these are all things that are tied to materialistic things, right? Now, unfortunately, on the entrepreneurial journey, that may take some time. So what I experienced personally when I was in media, I was very materialistic, and my definition of success was materialistic. Clearly, it was how much money am I making, etc. Right? But what I noticed happening naturally, right, without even noticing it, I only noticed it like a year later when I went into agriculture, right? My definition of success changed, right? So for me, it became little milestones, right? So if I had an idea on how I could do the system, right, I had it in my head, I put it on paper, we imported equipment, I tried it out and it worked. There's nothing more satisfying than those moments, right, where you're like, I'm getting closer to making this a reality, right? If you're doing projects with farmers and they're seeing the benefits of it, right, and they thank you for it and they tell you how that has impacted their lives, those are moments that money cannot pay for, right? Because I feel like what happens is every time you have these moments, it like fuels your tank, right? It's like a car and it just puts fuel in it, right? And it puts fuel in it. Because when the bad times come, and there will be bad times many, right? You're going to have to take from that fuel to kind of get you going and keep you going to not give up, right? So one is really understand what is your definition of success, right? How are you don't have to have X amount of money and then you're successful. That's not true. You can have your own definition of success, right? So, and then using that passion that's driving you, right, to really get through the tough times and always like try and draw back to like, why am I doing this? What is making me so happy about this journey, right? So I think mental health is a huge thing that people don't really talk about on that journey, right? That one really needs to be aware about, because you're going to go through depression. You're going to feel very alone, because the entrepreneur journey is a lonely journey. You're on your own technically, right? And even though people around you can say, oh, wow, that must be so tough, and I can understand, they don't understand, right? Unless they're literally in the same boat, they don't, right? So you have to really be your own like champion. But of course, it's important to have people who are supporting you when you're going through these tough times, right? Who are telling you, even if they can't completely relate. So I think understanding what's your definition of success, right? What's your objective? Reminding yourself what that objective is all the time. Like, look, I want to change, the economy in Nigeria. I want us to come back to where we were 60 years ago, where we're self-sustainable and we're not importing food, right? I want us to be able to grow so much that we can export again, right? So that the country can reap the wealth that it actually has, but we lost it because of oil, right? So these are my objectives and things that excite me and make me feel passionate. But you cannot go on the entrepreneur journey without passion, right? There has to be something that's emotional, that's driving you. It's not a 1 + 1 is 2. If you're in it for the money, you're in the wrong business. I can tell you that for sure. Being an entrepreneur is not about being money. And what happens is that won't sustain you. So when you start getting to these bad times, when money is that motivation, it won't sustain you. You will very, very likely give up somewhere at the part of the journey. So those are some of the things, I think that are important, is really understanding it's not a glorified, beautiful journey, right? It's a really, really tough one. So you have to be really ready for it. To understanding your definition of success, right? What drives you? What's your passion? Because you're going to have tough times. And that really applies to any sector or any entrepreneur. This is advice very general. It's not just, agriculture related or anything.
Yeah, but anyway, I think at least one lady, probably one or maybe 100 ladies who will see this video and they will hear your thoughts. They will rethink their own life, and probably I believe it will be very helpful for them. So thank you, Mavis. Okay, and also I see that I have already took quite a lot of your time. So, but it's very interesting for me.
I'm good, so you're good. I'm good with that.
Yeah, because I must say honestly that it's very interesting that you didn't have any educational background, as I said, but you are so wise lady and you share so like practical advice for people. That's why I want to continue.
No, so, no problem. Like I said, I'm free for the next 30 minutes. So I took an hour out. I scheduled an hour. So you can, as you have me now, take everything you need because you may not get it again.
Thank you so much, Mavis. So as you said, Google is your best friend, and if you have any questions, you just go to Google and ask Google about unclear moments. But still, as of now, your project ME Solutions, you are doing kind of soft part of the work with the hydroponics and aeroponics and other soilless production, or you are doing from starting point when you have the plan till the end when you have the ready-made solution. So what is your cycle of work?
So what our company focuses on, we took existing technologies such as aeroponics and hydroponics, right? Because they exist, there's nothing new. But it wouldn't, because in the Western world, right, normally those systems run on 24 hours light, right, electricity. But we do not have that in Nigeria, right? There's infrastructure issues, there's no electricity. So in as much as I found the solution of the aeroponics or hydroponics super interesting and exciting, the first thing I thought is you can't have an agricultural solution and then say, but you need 24 hours light, right? In Nigeria, it's just not going to add up because the amount of money you're going to spend on generators, etc., will be so substantial. And then it's also, we're really trying to be green. So, putting on generators and all that, more, pollution and all that is not something that I want to support, right? So it took me about 6, 7 months actually, and I actually re-engineered the system to not run on power 24/7, right? So it only has an electrical requirement of maybe 2 hours in a day or 3 hours in 24 hours, right? And so basically our business model is we set up our entire technology for you, right? Someone is a client, they want to go into agriculture, commercial agriculture, at least for now. Later, we would also look at maybe some home kits that people can put in their home and all that. But for now, we're focusing on commercial agriculture. We would literally come, install the greenhouse, install the aeroponics system, plant the plants, train your staff, right, to manage the system on a day-to-day basis. And probably by 2022, we would also support clients by actually off-taking their produce. So we will also buy and sell the produce that they're growing, the lettuce and tomatoes, whatever it is that they're growing. So we're really trying to be a 360 solution for clients just because there's so much drive in Nigeria right now in agriculture. I know it's everywhere in the world too, but in Nigeria, there's a huge interest in agriculture, right? But there's also this issue of we don't really understand a lot. I have the money, but I don't know how this works, right? So we understood that we can add a lot of value if we tell them we will sort everything out for you, right? And you have your return on investment period. This is how long the return on investment takes. This is when you start running on profit, et cetera, right? So that's kind of our solution. So we did work with agronomists, and that's really all the research and development we've been doing. There's been the technical research and development, just developing the technical aspect of the system. And then there's been the plants, right? Figuring out which plants grow how well there, what nutrients do they need, what diseases do we face, what challenges do we have. So we're really covering end to end.
Mm-hmm. Mavis, how many people are in your team? So is your company big or small?
Our company is very small. I mean, I think so because we're pre-investment and we're just trying to close on investment deals now. I really believe it's very important to work smart. As an entrepreneur, you really need to learn to work with low budgets, minimal resources. You make deals, barter deals, find partnerships, right? Technical partnerships. So I think you have to be really smart, when you're an entrepreneur and you're pre-investment. Even if you have investment, I still think it's very important to actually be very money-wise, right? I wouldn't say get investment and immediately get an office just because you want to have an office. It may not be necessary to have an office depending on what sector you're in, right? So what I did, on the installations that we did, some of the commercial installations that we did for people as we were researching is I hired staff ad hoc, so I hired them on the project, right? So technically it's myself and my co-founder, right? And then, when we don't need staff, we don't have staff, right? So we hire them on the project on and off, right? So we're really trying to be smart and spending resources. So technically it's just me, but of course, we have people that we hire when we need them.
Okay, it's very interesting. And I think that some other ladies will be, or even men who are watching us, they will be interested in the question of if you need a contractor and you have specific tasks. So, but you have like plenty of them, I don't know, probably if we are speaking about, let's say agronomists, and you have 5 agronomist profile in the list, how do you choose the right person? What is it internal feeling or what is the criteria?
Yeah, so my criteria, and I think maybe it's based on my own life experience, is I look for experience, right? Because I interviewed probably about 20 people at one of the federal universities of agriculture in Nigeria, and I couldn't hire any of them.
Wow.
Not even one, because you're in agriculture, right? And half of them had PhDs, and they're in agriculture. Half of them had PhDs, and they were like 30 or 31, and I was like, I don't understand. So I literally would check their profile and just see school, wonderful, right? You got your education, great, right? And then I wouldn't see work experience. I would just see MBA, PhDs, another PhD in this and in that, right? So there's some who have literally just been reading books and sitting in classes for 10 years. And in a field like agriculture, that is of absolutely no use to me. Because in a field like agriculture, you can read as much as you want in the books, but you have to go in the field and get your hands dirty. There is no two ways around that, right? You need to bring some plants in and kill them. They need to die, and you need to be so devastated and not understand what happened to them, right? There needs to be diseases that come. You have to gain experiences, right? So experience is a huge factor for me. Another factor, which is interesting because we're actually going through a process of hiring quite a few people right now for our subsidiary, which is in commodity trading. And there was one profile that I was really, really excited about because he didn't have fancy experiences or anything. Like, he was very young, right? And I think he worked in a gym and he worked for a cleaning company, very basic, nothing fancy. However, what I really appreciate, and I can tell you for sure I'm going to hire him, right? What I really appreciated is that he took a lot of pride. You could see in his CV that he took a lot of pride in what he did, right? So he would write how the gym that he worked in, he was just a receptionist, right? But that in the first week, he increased their clientele by 1.4%. And I'm like, so this person, he got customers, and then he went through the trouble of calculating, okay, this is how many customers they have. Oh, so it's 1.4%. So you can tell this is someone who's taking a lot of pride in anything he's doing. And I've been like that too. I mean, I've worked as a waitress, I've worked in a call center, I've done like the low jobs, right? But I always gave it 110%, always, right? And I feel like that's really important. So it doesn't matter if your work experience isn't fancy in big companies, but from a CV, you can tell if someone is taking pride in what they're doing, right? And those are the kind of people that I would want to groom, because those are people who are going to flourish in life. There's no doubt in my mind. Those are people who flourish. So some of the things I look for is just, pride in what you're doing, experience, willingness to learn, right? Openness, flexibility. Those are some of the things I look for, because I can teach anyone anything, right? You can always teach them what you need them to learn. But your attitude, for me, is probably like 80% of everything, because that would kind of determine how the working experience will be, right? So what's your attitude to work, your life attitude, right? How do you approach things in life, right? So those are some of the things that I look for, aside of degrees, right? I'm really looking for experience, good attitude, yeah.
Mavis, we had one conversation with a lady. Her name is Erna, and she works in the greenhouse industry in South Africa. And she was saying exactly what you are saying, that they lack of people who know how to build these greenhouses. So she is not looking at all at any knowledge about greenhouses. She's looking for real people. Person who is in front of her, and then she sees the passion, and then she said, we will teach them everything. Just be nice and proud of your experience. Yes, I see that you confirms these truths of life. Okay, and then what is else interesting about you? I know that you are quite active on LinkedIn and other social media. What people, what companies, who is inspirational for you, whom you are following, and advise us to follow as well?
Okay, so I think I'm not really your typical entrepreneur. I'm not one of those people who says, oh, read these books and I follow these people. I'm not really like that. I'm actually very active on LinkedIn, which is true. It's probably the only platform I'm actually very active on, because I'm not very active on social media generally. On Instagram, Facebook, I wouldn't post for months, sometimes a year, right? But LinkedIn, I find very interesting because I think once you've expanded, like, I mean, I have like 3,000 followers, which shocks me, right? I don't even know how and when that happened, right? But what I really like is when you start connecting with people, what I'm always really looking for is the kind of news I get to see, right? Because I feel like LinkedIn is a window to the business world, right? And internationally, right? And then depending on who you're connected with, you can kind of determine what kind of business world, because of course there's so much going on in the world, right? It could be any sector. So I have a very general interest in everything. It could be healthcare, right? I find tech healthcare. I follow NASA. I follow NASA. I find what NASA is doing absolutely mind blowing. Like they're in space. It blows my mind, right? Like the future. What are we doing in the future? How are we going to space, right? Of course, I follow the Richard Bransons of the world and the Elon Musk and all that. I mean, I find these things very interesting, but I don't really have any like specific people or specific things I follow. I think one of the companies or two companies actually in my field, very specific to me that I follow is InFarm. And thankfully, I was then lucky enough to actually meet the founder, and we're looking to collaborate maybe in the future. So InFarm is a German company, actually. While they're no longer a startup now, they've raised like $300 million. So I think at this point, they're no longer a startup. They're a company, they set up basically a soilless farming systems in the supermarket, which is absolutely mind blowing. So you can harvest like vegetables like right there in the store, right? If you want to buy lettuce, they would just cut it and it's fresh, right? So that absolutely blew my mind. And then I was lucky enough when some people from Audi Germany came to Nigeria, and one of them knew the co-founders. And I'm from Berlin, so when I was in Berlin, I met one of the founders, and we're looking how we can collaborate. So InFarm is one of the companies that I follow. I really admire their journey. I think sometimes it's also good to remind you that the journey is long. Because when you see someone like InFarm and you're like, oh, they raised $50 million, now accumulatively they've raised $300 million, and you're just like, oh my God, I've not done anything. But then I look at their story, right, and they're like 10 years old, right? So of course they have a few years of me. So I think that's also sometimes good to just remind yourself, okay, yes, they're very big, but they've also been doing it a little bit longer. Another company that I follow specific to what I do is AeroFarms, and they are actually an aeroponic company. So of course that's even more interesting for me. They're an aeroponics company in New Jersey in the States, and they own the biggest aeroponic farm in the world actually. And they're about to set a huge R&D facility up in, I think in Dubai. And it's like a $300 million type of research facility, which is crazy, right? And I'm like, yeah, I wish we would spend money on R&D, because I really, really believe in research and development. I really think there needs to be a lot more funding going into research and development rather than just product, and knowing that you can generate revenue immediately. Because research and development is difficult, right? Because in research, you're not creating revenue, you're not creating business, right? So a lot of people are not inclined to fund that. But the truth is, in research and development is where you're creating the products of the future, right? And the future products even as a company. So I really, I'm a huge fan of AeroFarms, just because they do what I do, right? They do it obviously much bigger, much fancier, much techier. So those are some of the people. I mean, there are obviously women I follow, right? The Pepsi woman, I always forget her name, right? So there are certain women, right? I'm fans of Hillary Clinton and people like that. So, but there's no one specific. I think I just love LinkedIn because it just shows me what's happening in the world, right? Just on my feed, just everything. Cars, healthcare, tech, anything.
You have already said these two companies, InFarm and Hydroponics, so it's very good that you said that, because it's interesting to hear about niche examples, because as you said, everyone is following like Elon Musk, or I don't know.
Exactly.
Yes, but to see these small stories which became huge stories after 10 years, yeah, it's very good.
Absolutely. And I think it's important as an entrepreneur to check what is happening locally in the field that you're in, but also globally, right? And I don't think you necessarily have to look at them as competition. At least the sector I'm in agriculture, I don't view anyone as competition because we're not even scratching the surface of what we're meant to do. We're not producing enough food. So I don't see any other agricultural company as competition. I'm always thinking, oh, where can we collaborate? How can we work together? How can we, synergize? So I think people obviously should always inform themselves of what's happening, kind of learn from their story, get inspired by their story,
I like the key approach is not about competition, but about synergy of work together.
Absolutely.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Mavis, probably it will be the last question. Are you reading any book now?
So I used to read a lot when I was much younger. I don't anymore, and I haven't, to be honest, I have to admit I haven't in years, right? Probably in 10 years, I've barely read, right? Which I find unfortunate, and it is something that I would like to change, right? Because I do enjoy reading. But I can tell you, there's coincidentally one book I just read like a week ago.
Say the name, the title.
And I read it in 2 days. So so there's one woman I follow, and I'm a huge fan of hers, huge fan. Her name is Brené Brown. And she, I absolutely love her, and it's funny, right? Because I'm an entrepreneur, why should I care about Brené Brown, right? But like I said, I feel like mental health is such a big and crucial part of the entrepreneurial journey, right? Because it's such a difficult journey to be on where you need to take whatever resource, if you can afford, seeing a therapist, which I would highly recommend, right? You should still find resources and ways you can support yourself and your own mental health, right? Now, for those who don't, I can tell who Brené Brown is, right? But for those who don't know who Brené Brown is, right? She is a scientist who studied shame, right? And she became this complete TED Talk wonder, right? Her videos is like one of the most viewed videos on TED Talk, right? Because that talk was the power of vulnerability, right? And it's so fascinating because now, the past few years, she's just working with all these big CEOs, with the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, right? And that should kind of tell you, okay, so there is a connection between that mental aspect and our mental health and mental fulfillment and mental stability and work. There is a direct link, right? So the last book I read was The Gift of Imperfection. And that's because I struggle with being very, very hard on myself. I feel like I'm never doing enough. I'm never good enough. I'm, especially in my work, right? I always feel like I should be doing a lot more. I should be delivering a lot better. I should, right? And in the process, you're really draining yourself and just being very negative and creating a lot of negative energy around yourself. So The Gift of Imperfection is the last book I just read like last week. And it was really, really good. I was 2 days.
It's amazing because soon I will open the fan club of Brené Brown here.
I will be there. I will be there because I need to read her other books. So I really need to go into reading her books. So she's someone obviously I follow on LinkedIn as well. That's someone I really admire just because she's addressing really interesting topics and how we can apply these to our day-to-day life and just overall happiness, right? Because you can have all these businesses and companies and all that, but at the end of the day, we all do need to feel fulfilled and happy and joyful, right? That really should be very important to us either way, no matter what.
Thank you, Mavis, so much. And I think,
and one of my other, just to bring that up, sorry, just to interrupt you, one of the other books that I was going to bring up, although that's a very long time ago, is Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist.
Oh, right? Yeah, it's so philosophical.
Yes. Right. Again, I feel like a lot of, so Brené Brown and Paulo Coelho have a lot in common. It's just Brené Brown does it from a scientific point of view, and Paulo Coelho uses stories to bring a point across, right? So they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it in a different way. And The Alchemist really, for me, the moral, I think everybody has a different takeaway, but for me, the moral of the story was, and to be honest, what I read in that book, I apply. It's part of my definition of success, right? Because, this boy went on this journey, he was going round and round, but what he was looking for was right there, right? And the journey was the goal, right? There wasn't somewhere at the end where if he got there, then he'll be happy, right? So that was really something I took away and I applied to my day-to-day life now on the entrepreneur journey, because on the entrepreneur journey, I can tell you every entrepreneur always tells themselves, oh, when I get investment, then everything will be good and then I'll be happy, right? And then, oh, okay, we've gotten seed investment, but when we get Series A, then, or when our product gets that, no, right? You have to realize that the journey, this is it. This is the goal. As we're on it, it's happening right now, and you have to appreciate it and live it now. There's no when I get there, right? Because I tell people in startup talks when they're always, oh, how do you get around finances, et cetera, right? And I tell them, look, if materialistic matters would make you happy, then why do billionaires commit suicide?
Exactly.
Right? Because if there was money, then all the rich people would just be happy. They wouldn't have to be sad. So clearly, it's not money, right? So we have to stop focusing on that, because before you know it, you're 50 and all you were looking for was this and the money and the this and the car and the apartments, and you never found happiness, right? So that for me is really part of where this message is, right? The journey, this is it. As life is happening to you, this is the goal. There is nothing else you're looking for, right? It's just the journey and enjoying that, So those were two, he's someone who really inspired me.
Thank you. We had this, I see, so yeah, 55 minutes of conversation, but I must say that
gosh, really?
this will be the best conversation ever. I mean that you're so good. Thank you, Mavis. Thank you so much, because after conversation with you, I feel much more better in my own startup.
Well, hey,
yes,
I'm glad I can help anyone. This journey is hard. We need to support each other and give each other advice, on how to get through this.
Yes, so thank you so much for your time today, and I truly wish you good luck, and I wish you to be happy on your journey and enjoy your life.